Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for joining us. And first of all, I would like to ask you about the convicted citizens of Russian Federation and Ukraine. Do you think they will ever be held accountable?
Well, everybody says now, no, that's not very likely. Probably the Russians, except for Girkin, they are in Russia under the protection of Putin. Where Karchenko is, actually nobody knows. He has left his address. We know that because all the documents that were delivered to him by the court are sticking out of his post box. So we don't know where he is. But no, how it looks now, they will not go to jail. But again, they are dependent on the protection of the Russian Federation. When that protection fails, or when they go over the border, because they are signaled now by Interpol, there's a possibility that they will be extradited to Holland, and then they'll have to go to jail. Yeah.
So basically, it all depends on the regime, right, in Russia. So as soon as Vladimir Putin loses the power, this way or that, these people will be held accountable, you're saying?
Not only, but one more technicality, not only the regime, but also they have to change the law, because right now it's strictly forbidden for Russia to extradite their own citizens. So not only change the regime, but also change the law. Yeah.
But there is one Ukrainian citizen, so...
Yeah, sure. But also, by the way, it's also forbidden for Ukrainian to extradite their citizens. But because they transferred let's say, the authority to Holland, between Ukraine and Holland, that won't be the problem. The problem is find them.
Yeah, absolutely. So why this one person, one of these four, was acquitted by the court?
You know, it's an enormously complicated case. I've got in my office a laptop. It's a standalone, and it contains more than 75,000 pages. I understood from the court now that the complete file is 90,000 pages, and a lot of that is proof. So what the court did is they really analyzed it very sharply, and said, well, Dubinsky gave orders to Karchenko, who executed those orders. Girkin probably didn't know about the presence of the Buk missile, but because he was in power, he facilitated everything. So he's guilty as well. But they said Pulatov was not able to influence the orders that Dubinsky gave to Karchenko. So he actually didn't play a role, and also he wasn't present at the site. Of course, the public prosecutor disagrees with that, because otherwise they wouldn't have persecuted that. But the court sees it differently. And of course, if you look at it a bit cynical, he is the only one represented. So the one who is represented is acquitted. So I think he has chosen the right strategy to let himself be represented by two Dutch lawyers, who, by the way, did a good job. Their pleading took 11 days. So they did everything they need to do for their client. And of course, we congratulated them after the verdict, because they deserve that. They did a good job, yeah.
Moscow says that this court, the whole trial, was politicized and biased, and they are complaining that Russian side was not involved and that Russian evidence were not included in the case. What would you answer to that?
Okay, to cut it short, that's total nonsense. They had all the possibilities. They had all the possibilities to react during the trial. And the only thing they've been doing from the beginning is bending stories, falsifying evidence. We can remember, you know, that first they said, yeah, it was a jet fighter that shot down MH17. When they realized that was a total nonsense theory. They changed the theory and they said, oh no, it was a Buk missile, but shot from the Ukrainian side. So, some of those press conferences with high military, Russian high military, even after 10 minutes, people from Bellingcat could also say, well, this is nonsense because this and this. So it not only the denial was wrong, but also the way they did it was very amateuristic. And as far as the court in The Hague, actually in Schiphol, they had the opportunity for an independent tribunal, but they voted that at the United Nations. So it's their own fault. Mm-hmm. If when they say, oh yeah, the court in The Hague ruled, they had the possibility, but they blocked it themselves.
So Peter, I just want to clarify, did Russian side present any evidence that was maybe included, maybe I don't know, maybe you took a look and understood that it doesn't make sense? Or, I mean, how this procedure was going on? Did you at least get something from Russia?
Well, of course, because partly the defense of Pulatov used for a part the same arguments, but only more serious. So they for example, they said, well, it's not even sure that MH17 was shot down by a Buk missile. And they gave a lot of technical arguments. So for a part, these are the same arguments that are also used by the Russian Federation. But they were thoroughly analyzed, first, of course, by the Joint Investigation Team, then the public prosecutor, but also thoroughly analyzed by the court themselves. So, of course, they took into consideration those arguments.
One more thing, just to close this this conversation about Russian involvement. They say that one of the biggest responsibilities is on the Ukrainian side, as you have just mentioned, not only because of the book, but also because Kiev has not closed the sky, in spite of the fact that there was a war going on and so on and so forth. Have you considered these accusations?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because that's also thoughts of many family members, that it's not only the Russian Federation, the people who really push the button, but there's also responsibility of the Ukrainian government. That's true. And as you know, there is a complaint by a German law professor at the European Court of Human Rights regarding that responsibility of not closing the airspace. But at one point, the Dutch government researched the question: did Ukrainian knew, or should Ukrainian have known about the possibility of civil aviation being shot down at that height? So there were questions asked in Dutch Parliament, also because the family members asked for that. They did a thorough research, and finally the conclusion was no, there was no possibility to take into account this possibility. So at this moment, sorry, we don't know what the ruling will be of the European Court of Human Rights, but at this moment, that chapter is closed. One
more thing. There are no Russian officials, including Vladimir Putin or others, in this verdict. Why so?
8 years seems very long, but if you look, for example, at the Lockerbie case, that took 20 years, and at one point also the public prosecutor said that to us, we didn't have the possibility to research everything, but we must go on now to prosecute those 4. But at the same time, the research, the investigations are going on, and that goes to two sides. So if you look at the four suspects, let's say as the middle guys who logistically organize it, you have down the people who were in the book installation, and on the top the high military, because you cannot move excuse me, you cannot move this heavy military material when people at the top didn't order that. So that means top military personnel that are close to the Kremlin or maybe in the Kremlin. What we've heard from the public prosecutor is that they are still investigating, and probably the first 3 months of next year they maybe come with results. Because I don't know if you have seen that, but an ex-employee of Bellingcat twittered about the fact that he has found out who the military staff was of the booksteller, with names, and he says, I also got exactly their addresses. We talked with the public prosecutor about it, and they say, of course, we know about this. Be quiet. We are still investigating it. At this moment, we can't say anything, but maybe first 3 months of 2023, we come back to you.
But still, I'm interested about the responsibility of the president of Russian Federation. Do you think that it may come, like the case, which would include him personally, a new case maybe, or the Minister of Defense of Russia? Is this a possible scenario in your opinion?
Look at the way the conviction took place regarding Gherkin. He didn't push the button. He probably didn't even know about the Buk missile being there, but as a military leader, he facilitated everything. The same could apply for the generals in Russia, or maybe even Putin. That is because that's a Dutch term. It's difficult to translate in English, but we call that functioneel daderschap. So that actually means, by being who you are, with the power that you have to influence a process, you are guilty. So that could even apply to Putin, yes.
And it's going to be clarified like next year, right?
Well, I don't think that they will have concrete results and saying, oh, we have these people, we are going to prosecute them now. But probably they will just say in what stage the investigation is, because they have a certain responsibility towards the family member. There's only one thing after the verdict here in Schiphol. It was very emotional. I was in a courtroom. You could hear a pin drop. Even for us lawyers, it was emotional. Very wordy verdict. But after the verdict, I met my clients, we all met our clients, and they said, okay, most of them said, we are done with it. We hope there's no appeal. So, of course, they want the direct responsible being brought to justice. But on the other hand, now there's a verdict. Emotionally, it also gives them the possibility to close a certain chapter. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for all the family members, but a lot of them are content now with this verdict, 3 lifelong sentences, and they're not really waiting for other procedures going on for years and years and years, staying emotionally involved every day.
Final thing that I wanted to ask you about is a compensation. Is there a possibility to get money, funds from Russia? And do you think there is a way to force them to pay?
Yeah, well, the cynical thing is now that we have 3 convicted, and they have to pay more than 16 million euros to the family members. They're not going to do that. So who's going to do that? We have an advance payment system in Holland in these criminal procedures. So the state is going to pay those 60 millions once the verdict is definitive, 8 months after the final verdict. The Dutch state is gonna pay that, and we'll try to get that money back from the 3 convicted. which is at this moment impossible. That's one side. At the other side, if you look at the way these big air crashes are being dealt with financially, again, the Lockerbie case, normally that is a result of negotiations. It rarely comes to a trial when it's about compensation. That also in the Lockerbie, Gaddafi, much pressure on Gaddafi. He finally paid the almost 3 billion. So at this moment, Russian Federation is not taking any responsibility. But I can tell you this file is not going away. So if Russia wants to be in the normal civilized European community again, they have to solve this question. Otherwise, because in every diplomatic contact, for sure, this will be at the table. So I know, of course, when we look at the Ukraine now, many Ukrainians suffering, but for us still, this is the biggest attack on civilians since the Second World War. And also for our Prime Minister now, this is still a very important case. So it will not go away. And at the end, I don't know how many years it will take, but the Russian Federation will have to solve this.
Thank you so much. I really understand everything you're saying, and I appreciate your answers and your participation. So hope to see you again on TV Rain, Peter.